shopping center parking lot. A woman is killed, and days later, the shooter is still on the run. The family of the mother killed last week in the Pocket neighborhood is pleading with whoever is responsible to turn themselves in.
Yeah, her family says the victim is a 26-year-old loving mother of 2 young children. ABC 10's Roxanne Elias has their emotional plea for help.
February 14th, 2024. Valentine's Day in Sacramento, California. While couples exchanged flowers and chocolates across the city, the Lake Crest Village shopping center along Florin Road carried its own quiet rhythm. The storefront lights glowed against the late-night sky. A handful of cars still scattered across the lot as the clock approached 11:15 p.m. Most people had already gone home to end the evening in warmth and laughter. But for one young mother, this night of love would take a devastating turn. Her name was Chasity Sparkman. Just 26 years old, she was a college student, an entrepreneur, and most importantly, the mother of 2 children who were her entire world. Chasity had agreed to meet the father of her children that night. It was supposed to be a routine conversation, a simple exchange in a public place she thought would be safe. But within minutes, the ordinary calm of the shopping center was broken by gunfire. Emergency calls flooded in. When first responders arrived, they found Chasity gravely injured. Hours later, her family's worst fear became reality. She was gone. 2 children, just 8 and 6 years old, were left without their mother. A family of 20 siblings lost their peacekeeper. And a community was forced to confront the unthinkable. How violence could strike in a space meant for safety, on a day meant for love. 2 children lost their mother on Valentine's Day. Honor Chastity's memory like this video, subscribe, tell me where you're watching from in the comment, and share so her story reaches every corner. Chasity Sparkman was just 26 years old, but in those years she had built a life filled with purpose, responsibility, and hope. She was a mother first, raising her 2 children, 8-year-old Zai and 6-year-old Priscilla, with a devotion that everyone around her could see. Friends and family described the way her children clung to her, how she turned everyday routines into moments of joy. Homework time wasn't just pencils and paper, it became laughter around the table. Bedtime wasn't just lights out, it was stories and songs, gentle reassurances that her children were safe and loved. For Chasity, motherhood wasn't a role she fell into. It was her calling. And she poured her energy into raising 2 children who would never question whether they were cherished. But Chasity wasn't only a mother. She was also a student, pushing herself forward in a way that inspired her peers. At Sacramento City College, she studied psychology, balancing the demands of school with raising 2 young kids. She had dreams of completing her degree, of using her education to create a stable future. Even while tackling assignments and exams, she was steadily growing her entrepreneurial hustle. Chasity launched her own small business, selling lashes and hair products, a venture that spoke to both her independence and her determination to create opportunities for herself and her family. Her entrepreneurial spirit didn't just pay bills, it sent a message to her children that hard work and creativity could open doors even in difficult circumstances. Inside her family, Chasity carried a unique role. She was one of 20 siblings in the Sparkman family, yet she managed to stand out in a household filled with personalities and voices. Her father, Alfonso Sparkman, often said she had a gift, a natural ability to forgive and to restore peace. When disagreements arose, Chasity stepped into the middle with calm words and a soft voice, finding a way to turn heated arguments into reconciliation. Siblings remember how she made sure no one felt left out, how she brought people back together when distance or hurt had pulled them apart. She wasn't the loudest or the most demanding, but she was the one you turned to when you needed a bridge back to someone you loved. In a family that large, conflicts were inevitable, but Chasity made it her mission to ensure they never fractured the bonds completely. She wasn't just a sister, she was the glue. Her social media captured so much of that spirit. Scroll through her pages and you'd see pictures of her children's smiles, snapshots of her business successes, and celebrations with her enormous family. There was no hiding her pride in being a mother, no disguising her joy in the little milestones, her son's soccer games, her daughter's first school events, family birthdays where everyone crowded into one photo frame. Through every post, she projected warmth, resilience, and determination. She showed her children that even in a world that could be harsh, love could create a safe space. Her online presence became an extension of who she was in real life, a young woman balancing ambition and responsibility with grace. To the people around her, Chasity wasn't just another face in the crowd. Her classmates saw a young woman who kept pushing, even when her plate was full. Her clients admired the way she transformed what could have been a simple business transaction into a relationship, greeting them with kindness and leaving them with a sense that they'd been cared for. Her siblings leaned on her wisdom. Her father treasured her compassion. Her children adored her consistency. Chastity's presence mattered. Her life mattered. And it was that unique combination of mother, student, entrepreneur, sister, and friend that made the loss of her life hit so deeply across every circle she touched. Chastity's story cannot be told without acknowledging the relationship that would one day play such a central role in her fate. It began like so many young romances do. Two teenagers in Sacramento drawn to each other, full of energy, laughter, and a sense of forever that only youth can carry. Friends and family remembered how inseparable she and Isaiah James seemed in those early years. They walked hand in hand through their neighborhood, posted playful photos online, and shared the kind of promises that made it easy for others to believe their bond was unshakable. To those who watched them grow together, it had all the markings of a love story destined for the long run. As the years passed, their connection deepened. Chasity and Isaiah eventually married, and soon their lives centered around their two children. Social media from that time painted a picture of joy and stability. Candid photos of Isaiah teaching their son to ride a bike, videos of their daughter taking her first steps, images of birthday parties filled with balloons and smiles. They looked like a young couple navigating life's responsibilities together, celebrating milestones with pride, and presenting a united front to the world. For Chasity, who had always poured herself into family, this chapter seemed to carry the promise of lasting happiness. But promises do not always hold. At some point, Isaiah became incarcerated. The public record does not detail the reason, but his absence marked a turning point. What had once been a relationship built on presence and partnership shifted into one defined by separation, tension, and uncertainty. Phone calls from jail, according to family members, often became sources of strain rather than comfort. Chasity tried to keep the conversations focused on their children, their needs, their growth, their daily lives. But James's tone reportedly grew more accusatory, questioning her actions outside the prison walls, challenging how she presented herself online, and suggesting that she had abandoned him. Family members later described those calls as moments where love and mistrust collided, leaving Chasity walking an emotional tightrope between loyalty and frustration. In his absence, Chasity carried the weight of parenting, school, and her business. She focused on building stability, pressing forward with her education, and growing her lash and hair venture into something that could sustain her family. Those closest to her noticed changes in how she presented herself online. The once vibrant, steady stream of posts slowed. When she did share, the spark in her updates seemed quieter. Relatives said she became more guarded, careful with her words, and more selective in what she allowed the world to see. To them, it looked like a young woman protecting herself while trying to maintain peace in a complicated relationship. Meanwhile, another shift was reportedly unfolding. According to family accounts later shared with reporters, Isaiah began a new relationship with a woman named Iona Burgos. The family believed this connection began while he was still tied to Chasity, creating layers of tension and betrayal that would only grow heavier after his release. February 14th, 2024. For most people in Sacramento, it was a day marked by red roses, last-minute gifts, and the comfort of spending time with loved ones. For Chasity Sparkman, It started like any other busy weekday. That morning, she attended classes at Sacramento City College, working toward her psychology degree, determined to push forward with the education that she believed would give her family stability. In the afternoon, she shifted roles seamlessly, focusing on her 2 children, making sure they were cared for, and reminded of the love that defined her home. Alongside her responsibilities as a student and a mother, she tended to her small business, taking orders for lashes and hair products, proof of the independence she had carved out for herself. Those close to her said it was a full but ordinary day, one that carried no sign of how it would end. As evening set in, family members later shared that Chasity received several calls. The conversations weighed on her. She reportedly voiced hesitation about meeting Isaiah James that night, but she agreed, choosing what she thought would be a safe and neutral location. A public shopping center with lights, open space, and the normal traffic of people coming and going. She told her sister she wouldn't be gone long, words that still echo for those left behind. Around 11 p.m., her car pulled into the Lake Crest Village Shopping Center, near the intersection of Florin Road and Greenhaven Drive. Security cameras confirmed her arrival, capturing the vehicle as it entered the lot. It was late, but not entirely deserted. A few cars remained, shop windows still glowing with traces of Valentine's decorations. Chasity likely believed the visibility and familiarity of this space would offer a measure of protection. By 11:15 p.m., the quiet of that night was shattered. Gunfire rang out across the parking lot, cutting through what had been the tail end of a holiday evening. Nearby residents called 911 within moments, voices urgent and shaken. Sacramento police officers rushed to the scene, arriving within minutes. Under the glare of flashing lights, they found Chasity gravely injured. Emergency medical teams worked quickly, loading her into an ambulance and racing toward the hospital. Despite every effort, the injuries were too severe. A short time later, doctors pronounced her dead. When word of the shooting reached Chasity's family, disbelief gave way to heartbreak. In a family as large as the Sparkmans, news travels fast, but no one was prepared for the call that confirmed their daughter and sister was gone. Her father, Alfonso, a man who had raised 20 children and carried the strength of a lifetime, now faced the unimaginable task of absorbing the reality that one of his own had been taken. Siblings who had relied on Chasity's steady presence were suddenly left without the person who so often calmed their storms. They crowded into their father's home, each one processing grief in their own way, united by shock that the woman they looked to as a peacemaker had been silenced. And while the weight of that loss was unbearable, the hardest moment still waited ahead, the moment they would have to tell her 2 children that their mother was never coming back. 8-year-old Z and 6-year-old Priscilla asked questions that had no answers. When will Mom come home? Is she still at the hospital? Their innocence collided with a reality too heavy for them to understand. Family members described the agony of explaining to the children that their mother had passed, trying to soften words that could never be softened enough. The sound of their small voices, filled with confusion, broke the hearts of everyone in the room. In those first hours, the Sparkman family was not just grieving. They were trying to hold 2 young lives together in the face of a loss no child should ever endure. Outside their circle, the community moved quickly to show support. Within days, neighbors, classmates, and strangers drawn by compassion gathered in the parking lot of the Lake Crest Village Shopping Center. Dozens came with candles, flowers, balloons, and handwritten notes, creating a space of remembrance on the very ground where tragedy had unfolded. Photographs of Chasity were placed on display, her smile illuminating the darkness as if to reclaim the spot for love instead of violence. Local businesses in the plaza closed their doors early in respect, their owners standing shoulder to shoulder with residents, joining the vigil to honor a young woman whose life had touched so many. Stories were shared aloud, memories of her kindness, her ability to make others feel seen, her role as a mother who lived for her children. The flicker of candlelight became both a symbol of mourning and a quiet promise that her life would not be forgotten. For the Sparkman family, those vigils were both comforting and heartbreaking. To see the community surround them with such love was a reminder of the impact Chasity had made, but it also underscored the magnitude of what they had lost. The children clung to relatives, watching as grown men and women cried openly for their mother, a moment that etched itself into their memory. The loss was not abstract. It was their reality now, one that would shape the rest of their lives. This is why we tell these stories. If you're watching, please like this video so more people can see it. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from to show the family they're not alone. The moment Chastity's death was confirmed, Sacramento police launched a full-scale homicide investigation. Detectives began piecing together the final hours of her life, retracing her steps, examining the evidence from the shopping center, and speaking with those closest to her. Witnesses who had heard the gunfire were interviewed, and security cameras in the parking lot were pulled for review. From the very beginning, investigators treated the case as urgent, polite, knowing the community was shaken and a family was desperate for answers. Before long, their work began pointing in a clear direction. Two names emerged: Isaiah James, the father of Chastity's youngest child, and a woman named Iona Burgos. Detectives identified both as persons of interest, and soon warrants were secured for their arrests. The search for them did not stop at the city limits. Evidence suggested they had left California, and the investigation expanded quickly across state lines. Sacramento detectives coordinated with the FBI, sharing information and tracing movements that stretched far beyond Sacramento County. Financial transactions were analyzed, revealing a trail of activity that helped narrow down their location. Surveillance footage from various stops was pulled and studied, each new clip providing small but critical details about their path. The search became a coordinated, multi-jurisdictional effort, showing the lengths law enforcement will go to when suspects flee across the country. That search came to an end in mid-March. Between March 12th and March 14th, 2024, Isaiah James and Iona Burgos were located in New York City. Working with local authorities, Sacramento police and the FBI carried out the arrests without incident. The announcement of their capture marked a turning point for Chastity's family, who had endured weeks of uncertainty, waiting to hear that the people accused of taking her life had been found. From Sacramento to New York, nearly 3,000 miles, law enforcement had followed the evidence and closed in. In official statements, the Sacramento Police Department confirmed the arrests and thanked federal and local partners for their role in the operation. Press conferences were held to update the public, with detectives explaining that James and Burgos would face homicide-related charges. The district attorney's office echoed that message, noting that extradition proceedings were already underway to return both suspects to Sacramento to face justice. For a grieving family and a community still gathering at vigils, the news carried a measure of relief. But it was only the beginning of a much longer journey through the courts. The arrests did not bring Chasity back, but they did signal that accountability would be pursued, and that the system had begun moving forward. What began as a late-night shooting in a quiet shopping center parking lot was now the focus of a case that crossed states, involved multiple agencies, and placed two names before the public as the central figures in the fight for justice. Once Isaiah James and Iona Burgos were brought back to Sacramento, the attention shifted from the investigation to the courtroom. Prosecutors moved forward with homicide-related charges against both of them, making clear that the case would not be resolved quickly, but instead follow the long and deliberate process of the law. For the Sparkman family, each new development meant sitting in courtrooms, listening to attorneys argue details, and watching as the system they hoped would deliver justice took its course. Court documents show that by January of 2025, a preliminary hearing had been held. During that hearing, evidence was presented to a judge to determine whether the case should move forward to trial. The judge ruled there was enough to proceed, and the defendants were held to answer on the charges. Within days, they were arraigned on what is known as the information, the formal charging document that follows a prelim. Both James and Burgos entered not guilty pleas, setting the stage for trial. The docket reflects how the calendar began to fill with hearings, continuances, and scheduled trial dates, each one carrying weight for a family waiting for closure. But despite the headlines, it is important to remember that in the eyes of the law, both defendants remain presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That principle, as difficult as it may feel in cases that stir such deep emotions, is at the core of the American justice system. It ensures that guilt is established through evidence, argument, and ultimately a verdict, not assumption. For viewers unfamiliar with how these proceedings unfold, the steps matter. After charges are filed, the preliminary hearing functions as a checkpoint, allowing a judge to review whether the evidence presented is strong enough to move forward. Once that threshold is met, the arraignment on the information solidifies the charges. From there, the case is scheduled for trial, with attorneys on both sides preparing their strategies, examining discovery, and making motions that could affect what evidence is presented to a jury. Trials in cases like this can take months, even years, depending on delays, motions, or the sheer volume of material that must be reviewed. For the Sparkman family, sitting through these hearings means hearing Chasity's name repeated in legal filings and court calendars, a constant reminder of the loss they carry. They show up quietly, their presence a sign that Chasity will not be forgotten in the process. Each appearance is heavy with the knowledge that while the law moves at its own pace, their grief remains constant. As of today, no verdict has been reported in the case. The legal process continues, active and unresolved, and the family, along with the broader community, continues to wait. On-screen text reads, "As of January 2025, the case remains active. No verdict has been reported." As investigators and prosecutors built their case, those who loved Chasity began to reflect on the troubling signs that had marked her relationship. Family members had spoken about moments when Isaiah's behavior seemed less about partnership and more about control. They remembered the tension in phone calls from jail, where instead of conversations about the children, there were accusations and demands. Experts in the field of domestic violence often describe this pattern as a progression. What may begin as jealousy or constant questioning can, over time, intensify into something far more dangerous. In Chastity's situation, those who knew her best felt they had witnessed that shift, a gradual tightening of control that, in hindsight, revealed the warning signs of escalation. In March of 2024, just weeks after her passing, a community center in Sacramento filled with people determined to honor the life of Chasity Sparkman. The hall was packed. Family, friends, classmates, neighbors, and even clients from her small business all came together. They spoke not only of their grief, but of the impact she had made in just 26 years. Friends remembered her laughter and her ability to lift the mood in any room. Customers recalled how a simple transaction with her often turned into a conversation that left them feeling cared for. Her siblings described her as the bridge in their family of 20 children, the one who mended rifts and reminded everyone of the importance of unity. Her father, Alfonso, listened with pride, hearing others confirm what he had always known. Chastity's gift was her heart. Around the room, photographs told her story. Birthday parties with Zai and Priscilla, school events where she cheered from the sidelines, family gatherings where her smile pulled everyone closer. The memorial was not just about loss. It was a reminder of a young woman who had given so much of herself to others. For her children, Zai and Priscilla, life after that night became a new reality. Their grandparents, aunts, and uncles stepped in to provide stability, surrounding them with love and ensuring the routines their mother had built remained intact. Teachers later noted the resilience of the two siblings, crediting the strength of the family that carried them. A memorial fund was set up for their education, supported by relatives, community members, and strangers who had been moved by Chasity's story. It became a way for people to contribute the future she had dreamed of for her children, even though she was no longer there to guide them herself. Her legacy continues in the values she lived every day. Chasity believed in forgiveness, in family loyalty, and in resilience. She was the one who extended an olive branch when others held grudges. She was the one who chose peace over division. Those lessons are now being passed on to her children, carried forward by a family determined that her influence will not be erased. For them, her life was more than the tragedy that ended it. It was a blueprint of love, strength, and unity, one they are committed to keeping alive. 2 children lost their mother on Valentine's Day. Her dreams of becoming a psychologist, her business, her laughter, cut short. If you've made it this far, you know stories like this must be told, not forgotten. Honor Chasity's memory, hit subscribe, share this video, and comment below with your thoughts. And if you or someone you know is in a dangerous relationship, we've placed resources in the description. Please use them. 1 comment, 1 share, 1 subscriber can spread awareness that might save another life.